In the affluent neighborhood of Victoria Island, Lagos, behind the grand gates of an opulent villa, a quiet storm was beginning to stir. Each morning, as part of her ritual, Madame Ifama sat gracefully on her balcony, sipping her coffee and reviewing the day's itinerary. To her, life was all about luxury, respectability, and control. She was the matriarch of her household, commanding every corner of her estate with silent authority. But there was one truth she didn't know, one that would soon shatter the carefully curated world she had built. The young maid who had served in her home for years was, in fact, her own flesh and blood. Abeni was just 17 years old, introverted, soft-spoken, and unfailingly obedient. She moved through the house like a whisper, completing tasks with quiet precision and never uttering a word of complaint. Madame Ifama treated her with polite detachment, firm but fair. Still, there was an invisible string between them, a strange tension neither of them could name. Abeni often felt a deep, inexplicable sense of belonging within these walls. She couldn't understand why, but it was as though her soul recognized something her mind couldn't grasp. Many years ago, in the bloom of her youth, Ifama had fallen deeply in love. It was a romance that her conservative family deemed scandalous. When she became pregnant, the shame was too much for them to bear. After a secret birth arranged by her mother, Ifama was told the baby had died shortly after delivery. Devastated, she never spoke of the child again. Since then, she had never been able to conceive, carrying that silent sorrow with her through every stage of her life. But the truth had been buried, not lost. The child survived. Unbeknownst to both Ifama and Abeni, fate had drawn them back together under the same roof. Abeni had grown up in an orphanage and was eventually placed in domestic service, ironically, in the very home of the mother who unknowingly mourned her. Neither of them had any idea of the blood bond they shared, yet something unspoken lingered between them. A soft pull. A mother's protective instincts, she thought, were long dead, flaring up at odd moments, and an Abenia yearning for identity, for history, for truth. The truth was about to find them. And when it did, it would rip through both their lives like a storm long denied. As Abeni stepped out of the kitchen, tired and sore from a long day's work, Madame Ifama's voice echoed in her mind. Clean out the trunks downstairs as well. Unlike the other maids in the house, Abeni never raised her voice or complained. She wasn't just working in that house, she was searching for answers. For a name to the emptiness she had always felt deep inside. The old storage room in the basement had been locked for years. It had taken her hours just to find the key. When she finally turned the handle and pushed the creaking door open, the air inside hit her like a wave, damp, musty, forgotten. Stacks of wooden trunks lay covered in layers of dust, like relics from another lifetime. But one of them stood out. It was older than the rest, and scrawled faintly across the top were 3 letters, IMO. Her breath caught. With trembling hands, she lifted the lid. Inside were faded baby clothes, yellowed letters, and several old photo albums. One letter was tucked carefully into the corner, its envelope worn but lovingly preserved. Across the front were the words, "My little star." The handwriting was delicate, clearly a woman's. Abeni opened it slowly, her hands shaking. "My dearest star. The night I had to let you go, my heart broke into pieces, but you had to survive. If you're ever reading this, please know I never forgot you. I love you, IMO." Tears spilled down Abeni's cheeks. The words filled something hollow inside her, yet they also opened a door to a deeper question. Was this letter meant for her? If so, was her presence in this house truly a coincidence, or was it fate's deliberate hand guiding her all along? She picked up one of the photo albums and opened it. The first page showed the face of a baby, familiar in an eerie, soul-stirring way. It was just a hunch, just a flicker of recognition. But as she turned the pages, her heart raced faster, and then she saw it. A photo of the baby, nestled in the arms of a young woman, who looked unmistakably like a younger Madame Ifama. Abeni collapsed to the floor, clutching the letter to her chest. Her heart thundered inside her ribcage. Could it be? Could the woman she'd served for years, quietly, respectfully, unknowingly actually be her mother? That night, sleep never came. She placed the letter and photographs carefully beneath her pillow, guarding them like fragile pieces of her own identity. And when the first light of dawn pierced through her small window, Ebony made a decision. The time for silence was over. She had to follow the trail of the past. It was no longer about suspicion now. It was about the truth. Ebony rose with the first light of dawn. The dark circles under her eyes weren't from lack of sleep, they were the bruises of the battle waging in her mind. Her heart thudded with a new kind of fear, but it wasn't fear that drove her forward now. It was the truth. And the truth had come far too close to run from anymore. As she set the breakfast table, Madame Ifama entered the kitchen. She glanced at Ebony briefly before taking her usual seat. Just like every morning, she sipped her coffee in silence. But today, something was different. Ebony gathered her courage. "Madam," she said softly, her voice trembling, "I found some old photographs and letters in one of the trunks downstairs." The cup in Ifama's hand shook slightly. Her eyes locked on Ebony's with a flicker of something surprise, maybe fear. What letters? Ebony felt something crack inside her. She reached into the pocket of her apron and pulled out the letter. With hesitant fingers, she placed the envelope on the table in front of Madame Ifama. The moment Ifama saw it, she knew. She recognized the envelope, the handwriting, the aching silence that had surrounded her the day she wrote it. Her eyes welled with tears, but her face remained composed. "What does that even mean to you?" she asked, her tone sharp, defensive. Ebony's voice, this time, was clearer, stronger. "I don't know anything about my past, but something inside me, ... It tells me I was born in this house." For a moment Ifama said nothing. Then, without finishing her coffee, she stood up. "Stop this nonsense. Go back to the cleaning room. And stay out of those trunks." But Ebony couldn't turn back now. That night, after the house went quiet, she slipped back into the storage room. Her fingers flipped through the rest of the photo album, page after page of buried memories. And then she found it a folded piece of paper tucked between two photographs. A birth certificate. The baby's name was left blank. But the line that named the mother froze her blood. Mother's name, Ifama Amadu. There was no denying it now. Everything from this moment forward had to be faced. No more silence, no more pretending. But the line that named the mother froze her blood. Mother's name, Ifama Amadu. There was no denying it now. Everything from this moment forward had to be faced. No more silence, no more pretending. The old woman paused. At first, she shook her head slowly. But then she stopped and sighed, her expression shifting, her voice lowered to a hush. Many years ago, Madame was just a girl herself. She had a child too young, too afraid. Her family was ashamed, so they gave the baby away to an orphanage. But Madame, she never forgot. She always believed that baby would find her way back one day. Ebony's throat tightened, her eyes burning with tears she refused to let fall. The letter, the birth certificate, the feelings she'd carried her whole life, they were all coming together. It was her. She was that baby. But when the moment came to confront the truth, what would she do? That night, heart pounding like thunder in her chest, Ebony walked to Madame Ifama's room and knocked. The door creaked open, and there stood Ifama, surprised by the late visit. Ebony stood tall, the folded birth certificate in her trembling hand. She held it up. Is this my mother's name?" Ifama looked at the paper, then slowly met Ebony's eyes. Her face crumpled. Years of pain, buried so deep, suddenly erupted in waves. Her tears came fast, uncontrolled. "Yes," she whispered, voice cracking. "It's you. You're my daughter." The silence between them stretched. It felt like the air had been drained from the room. Finally, Ebony spoke quiet, but piercing. Why did you leave me?" Ifama's voice trembled. "My family was ashamed. I was young, ... helpless, I thought I was doing what was best for you, but I loved why I never stopped. I thought about you every single day." As tears slipped down Ebony's cheeks, she spoke only one word. Too late. That night, Ifama fell to her knees, her sobs echoing off the walls. Ifani walked out of the room without another word. The emptiness inside her wasn't gone, but now, she finally understood it. The truth, no matter how painful, had set her free. That morning, the warm Lagos sun filtered through the kitchen window, casting long golden lines across the tiled floor. The house was silent. No children's laughter, no graceful footsteps echoed on the marble. Only silence. And behind that silence, a heavy, muffled regret. As Ebony prepared her morning coffee, she noticed her hands trembling. She hadn't slept all night. Her eyelids were swollen, her mind consumed by a storm of thoughts. "Yes, you are. You're my daughter." Ifama's voice still echoed in her ears. But was it really that easy to say mother? There was a crack in Ebony's heart, now a deep one. And inside that crack, years had settled. Years of lonely childhood, of growing up without knowing who she truly was, of spending holidays in different houses. No one had ever said to her, "You are mine." And now, the woman claiming to be her mother, had never been there. Her feet carried her through the garden almost instinctively, until she found herself standing outside Madame Ifayama's room. She didn't knock. Inside, Ifayama stood by the window, clutching an old photograph of Benny's childhood photo, and sobbing quietly. "That was your photo," she said without turning around. "I took everything that belonged to you from the orphanage in secret. I couldn't visit you, but leaving you there shattered me every single day." Benny said nothing. The air between them was thick, heavy. Words no longer carried the weight they once did. "Your father," Ifamo's voice cracked. "He was gone. They put all the shame on me. My family treated you like a curse. But I missed you every single day." Benny's emotions swirled: rage, sorrow, confusion. One part of her wanted to scream, to demand answers. Another part just wanted to understand. "Then why?" she asked quietly. "Why did you bring me here as a maid? Why didn't you just tell me?" Ifama buried her face in her hands. "Because I was terrified. The moment I saw you, something inside me knew it was you. But what if I was wrong? What if I lost you again? So I let you stay, just to have you close, watching you every morning. It was like heaven in the middle of my personal hell." Benny walked out of the room. Her eyes were wet, but her mind was clear. She had come into this house as a servant. But she wasn't just that anymore. She was the daughter this woman had lost long ago. And now, from the ashes of the past, something new was beginning to rise. But nothing about it would be easy. That night, after hours of silent thought, Benny packed a small suitcase. She crept into the kitchen one last time and carefully arranged the children's dishes. Then she walked to Ifama's door and slipped a note underneath. "Knowing I'm your daughter filled a void in my soul, but it also opened another. Being a mother is more than giving birth. I've learned to find myself on my own. Now I need space to let you truly get to know me. Maybe one day we'll find forgiveness." That morning, the entire household was shaken by Benny's departure. When Ifama found the note, she collapsed to the floor and wept. She wrapped her arms around her abdomen, as if Benny were still there inside her. Weeks passed. Each morning, as she prayed, Ifama whispered Benny's name. The girl who had once been just a maid was now part of their family. Then one day, a letter arrived in the mailbox. The envelope bore a simple line: "Don't come looking for me, but know that you have a place in my heart." Ifama pressed the letter to her chest. And maybe, for the first time in years, she truly felt like a mother. As the rain pounded the ground with determination, Benny stood under the rusty tin roof of the hut in the backyard. In her hand was an old notebook that Madame Ifama had hidden among the bedclothes. Her fingers trembling, she turned the pages in. Each line squeezed her heart deeper. The pages were over 20 years old. It had been written in a hurry, but it was impossible not to recognize the writing. It was Ifama's handwriting. There was a hidden youth, a shame, and an indescribable pain in the pages. It was a confession of a young girl's pregnancy by a man her family did not approve of. Abeni's heart beat faster as the words went by. I gave birth in secret. My mother said the baby had died, but I still hear him crying at night. Tears welled up in Abeni's eyes. She began to walk toward the main house, clutching the notebook to her chest. Her feet were bare, the ground was wet, but she did not care. The wind howled behind her like the whispers of the past. Ifama was in the living room. She was looking through the newspaper, holding a teacup in her hand. She was startled to see Abeni in this state. What happened to you? She said, putting the cup on the table. Abeni slowly approached. I found this in your closet, she said in a low voice, holding out the notebook. Ifama looked at the notebook, then picked it up. Her face changed color as she opened the pages. Her lips trembled. Ifani, she said with difficulty, you shouldn't have seen this. I saw it, Abeni said. And now I have to ask, is that baby really dead? The question froze in the air. Ifeoma sank into the chair. Her face was darkened by the ghosts of the past. I didn't know, she whispered. They deceived me. They took you from me. They said she's dead. I tried to call, but they silenced me. They told me to forget. For your own good, Abeni sank to the floor. Her eyes were filled with tears. Am I your daughter? Ifeoma nodded. Yes, you always have been. They were both silent for a while. Then Abeni crawled over and put her head on her mother's knees. I've been searching for my place all my life, she said. It turns out I've always been here. Ifeoma took her daughter in her arms. Forgive me, she cried. The rain stopped. The sky slowly cleared. A happy ending is not always possible. But sometimes, the truth alone is enough. And sometimes, a new beginning.